y'all, Crystal here, and we are back for the Podcasting 101 series. So if you have not checked out the other two videos that are part of this series where we're going to talk about how to start, launch, and market a podcast, make sure you check those out after you watch this video. But today, we are specifically talking about how to launch a podcast. So let's just dive right in. So I've been teaching people how to start, launch, and market their podcast for quite a while now. And if I look at my podcast stats, I see how to launch a podcast continues to be the #1 download on my podcast. Well, except for the trailer episode, but that's because people are just curious as to what we're talking about. But after that, it is the how to launch a podcast episode. And I think it's because you want to know what to do with all this amazing content that you've created. Should I just hit publish? Should I tell people about it? Should I have a bigger audience? Like, how does this actually work? So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the 4 things that you need to know about launching a podcast. So the first thing I want to talk about is announcing your podcast launch date. So I know that a lot of people get uncomfortable when we start talking about equipment and planning content and actually like creating this podcast. But whenever I ask my students and my clients, you have to announce your podcast launch date. When are you going to do it? Everyone looks at me like a deer in headlights. It freaks them out. And I know why. Like, I totally get it. It's this mental block. Like, okay, I've created this thing. Like, I'm going to start getting some traction, but other people actually have to listen to what I've created. And it's not ready, and it's not perfect, and my equipment's not perfect, and did I say the right thing? I haven't covered all the things I want to say. It's like word vomit. They just come and they tell me like, it's not perfect. Like, oh my gosh. It's never going to be perfect. Your podcast is never going to be perfect. There, I said it. Maybe you've been struggling with this and you are the one that needs to hear this today, but I'm giving you some tough love from the bottom of my heart. Your podcast is never going to be perfect. So stop procrastinating when you're going to launch this thing, and let's set your podcast launch date. I actually did an entire podcast episode about picking the correct launch date for your podcast. Notice I didn't say the perfect launch date. I said the correct, because you're never going to have a perfect one. Something's going to come up and you can keep postponing this to the end of time, but I'm here. I want to be your accountability partner that says, nope, we are going to launch this podcast. This is the date that we're picking and we're going to stick with it. So I want you to go listen to this podcast episode so you know exactly when you should launch your podcast. But before you do that, let's move on to the other steps that we need to cover today. The second part in how to launch a podcast is choosing your hosting site. So what is a podcast hosting site? Well, it's where your podcast lives online. I always explain it as it's like the house where you upload all of your episodes every week, and your podcast hosting site is the means for you to get your podcast to all the platforms where you want to show up, whether it's Apple Podcast or Google Play or Spotify or Stitcher or iHeartRadio or all the other places where you want your podcast to show up. Your podcast hosting site is going to do this for you. And I recommend Buzzsprout.com. They are the ones that I have used from the very beginning, and I'm going to put a link below this video for you to try them out for free for 90 days. This is kind of why I went with them from the very beginning. They were recommended to me, and I thought, okay, like, I'm going to try this out. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but I won't be out any money. I've ended up loving them, and they have amazing resources. You can check out their free Facebook group, check out their blog, go check them out on YouTube. They have so many great resources for any level podcaster. So I highly recommend Buzzsprout, but you definitely need a podcast hosting site before you actually move into the next phase of the launch. But before we move on, I want to know, have you already launched your podcast and you're just watching this series because you wanted some podcasting tips? Or are you still in the stage of creating your podcast and you want to know how you can your podcast up for success from the beginning. Comment below, let me know what stage you're in. Okay, let's get back to Podcasting 101. The third thing that we need to talk about when it comes to launching your podcast is descriptions and show notes. These are actually really, really important. You may not think that they mean a lot. You're like, oh, maybe no one reads all of these. Like, I would be a blogger if people wanted to read what I have to say. I'm doing this because I am wanting to speak. I am wanting to use an audio version of my content. I want you to understand how important your descriptions and show notes are for the overall message of your podcast, because these are the parts that have keywords, and keywords are very important to your podcast, whether it's your podcast title or it is a description that you put up for each individual episode, or it's the podcast description that you have on all the platforms where you show up, or it's your show notes. Oh my gosh, y'all, this is so important to have keywords that are relevant to what your podcast is about in order for your podcast to show up in Google and in Apple Podcasts and all the places that you want people to find you. You have to take this into consideration. Don't let this be an afterthought. I want you to plan this into the strategy that you're using for your podcast. And I'm going to be really honest with you. It's taken me a long time to understand the importance of keywords. I told myself, oh, I'll figure that out later. I want to figure out my podcast first, and then I will concentrate on keywords. I'm telling you, this is something that I regret from the beginning of my podcast. I wish I would have put more emphasis in figuring this out. So if you want more tips on podcast and SEO, be sure to watch out for this video, which is all about SEO for podcast. And just another quick side note, as of me recording this video, Google only started indexing podcast episodes a few months ago. So this is kind of a huge thing, because as you can see here, whenever you search for a term in Google, podcast episodes show up. Y'all, this is incredible for a podcaster starting today, because your information could be seen by someone who is looking up specific things about your topic. So going back to keywords, this is why they are so important, and I want you to focus on this, even if you're just beginning. Make sure that you take the time to really understand keywords and SEO and how you can use these to your advantage. So step number 4 that we're going to talk about today is your podcast launch plan. This is where you take everything that you've learned so far and put it into an action plan for putting your podcast out into the world. There are so many ways to do this, and I totally geek out when it comes to marketing your podcast, as you will see in the next video when we talk about actually marketing your podcast. But I want you to have a plan in place, because this is where all of your hard work is really going to pay off. Now, if you've taken the time to write really good podcast descriptions and you know exactly what your podcast is about, you have a clear message. Remember, if you confuse, you lose. So you want to make sure that your message is so clear, you know exactly what you're talking about, who you're talking to. Then you need to know where your people are. Where are they online? Are they in certain Facebook groups? Do you need to go on Instagram and talk to them in a certain way? Do you need to do live video? How are you going to show up to announce to the world that you are starting this podcast? So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/episode 48, and that is where you're going to find the basic podcast launch plan. This is so important because it gives you an actual checklist of all the things you need to do before you're ready to launch your podcast. Again, going back to, you've already picked your podcast launch date, right? We've already taken care of that. Then you can write it on this launch plan and reverse engineer the success of your podcast launch. This is so important because, like I said at the beginning, the launch of your podcast is crucial to the momentum that you'll see from day one. So I want you to really pay attention and focus on the strategies that I cover in the launch plan, because these have proven to be successful for lots of my clients and lots of my students. So I want you to have the same success that they have. So if you've been enjoying this Podcasting 101 series, give this video a thumbs up and stay tuned for how to market a podcast. Check back every Friday for brand new videos and check out some of our other podcasting videos. And be sure to sign up for our free 5-day Create Your Podcast Bootcamp. It is some of the same strategies and tips that I'm sharing with you, but we go deeper and I give you a ton of resources that are going to help you be successful in your podcast journey. So remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.